Welcome to an introduction of how to relate to your government officials in the state of Florida. To be an effective citizen lobbyist, you should understand the legislative process and be able to communicate to the legislator the issues that are of importance to you. See, the legislators are not familiar with all areas that come before them that they have to make decisions on, and they depend on lobbyists and citizen lobbyists to help them understand those issues. So what's important to know about being a citizen lobbyist? 1. Why is maintaining a relationship with our elected officials important? Who are we trying to reach? How does a bill become law? When should a state legislator be approached about an issue of importance? How do you set appointments? Meeting etiquette and procedures. And finding your legislators. Why is maintaining that relationship with our elected officials important? Well, you are the best advocates to the interests of your industry. When you represent your industry to our legislators, you are the local expert. You are the person who knows the subject area that the legislator may not be that familiar with. So they have someone they can count on to get advice about a particular issue that you are an expert in. Who are we trying to reach? Well, in Florida, we're trying to reach our 40 Florida state senators, our 120 Florida state representatives. We are also trying to reach our U.S. senators and our U.S. representatives. In Florida, the Senate is made up of 40 senators. 50% are elected every 2 years, and they serve a 4-year term. There's a term limit of 8 consecutive years. Now, depending on when they're elected, that might mean it could run more than 8 years. It could be 10 years. There are 120 Florida state representatives, and they are elected every 2 years. Every representative every 2 years, and they serve a 2-year term. And they, too, have an 8-year consecutive year term limit. Now, consecutive year term limits mean that if there's a break in continuity, they can come back and run again, as long as they don't have more than 8, or in some cases, depending on when they're elected, a little longer term of service. For all of us, maintaining a relationship with the U.S. government can be important on certain issues where we have 435 U.S. congresspersons, 100 U.S. senators. The Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico both have a governor and a legislature. So in Florida, we have the Florida House and Senate that we are primarily interested in having a relationship with, and the islands have their local governor and legislature that they have a relationship with, and of course we all have a concern with the U.S. government. So in Florida, how does a bill become law? A bill may be introduced in either the Senate or the House, and one or more committees study the bill before it is presented to the full House or Senate. So that is the point in time during those committee meetings where it's easiest to make changes to the bills. And that is where there is an easy opportunity for public input and public comment, and that is the time when we are most interested in approaching our legislators, if we haven't done so during the formation of the bill. If the bill is passed through committee, then it is referred to the full legislative body, either the House or the Senate. If the bill passes in one house, it is sent to the other house for review. Sometimes there's parallel bills, so both House and Senate will be processing the bill at the same time. Ideally, those bills would be the same. They both approve the same bill, and then it has passed. Very often, it is not exactly the same in both houses, and so it goes, if there are changes or differences, it goes to the other house, and it may bounce back and forth a few times before both the House and the Senate pass the same bill. Once that consensus is reached, it is passed on to the governor for signing. The governor has 3 possibilities. He can sign the bill, and the bill becomes law. If the governor does not sign or veto the bill, it can become law. Or the governor may veto the bill, and then by a 2/3 vote of both House and Senate, they may override the governor's veto, and it can become law. So when does the House and Senate meet? In non-election years, the House and Senate will have committee meetings mid-September through mid-December. In election years, the committee meetings are mid-January to mid-February. And the session is a 60-day session, and in non-election years, it is mid-January through mid-March. In election years, it is March through April. So, connecting with legislators. Why is maintaining a relationship with our elected officials important? Well, it is to establish a connection so that the legislators have a go-to person when there's a question about the industry with which you are particularly familiar. Legislators are not well versed in everything that they have to make decisions on legislatively, so your input and the input of lobbyists is very important to them. And as a citizen lobbyist, you have a lot of credibility if you're an expert in your industry with that legislator. So if you have an issue and you have an established relationship with that legislator, you will have a much better chance of getting through to that person and having an influence on how that legislator ultimately votes, because you've already built a trusted relationship. You can establish yourself as a citizen lobbyist as representing a larger organization with many members, so that you're not just going there as a single voter, but you're going there as a voter who represents many other voters and who has influence with many other voters. So that provides a greater incentive for that legislator to listen to you and to be accommodating to whatever issue you're bringing to him or her. As a citizen lobbyist from the legislator's home district or region, you have a lot more punch, a lot more influence than a lobbyist in that you are a voter in that legislator's district and you're representing the hometown folks. So you are likely to get an appointment easier than a paid lobbyist. So when should a state legislator be approached about an issue or concern you may have? Well, the ideal time is during the bill formation phase. So if there's a particular bill you know is going to be brought up this year for a vote, getting involved with the legislator who's involved with formulating that bill is the ideal time before committee meetings, before the bill is introduced. The next best time is during committee meetings, when the bill is being reviewed by committee. Remember, in committees, it's easiest to change a bill. So, therefore, having influence during the committee process is much easier to get changes to a bill, much easier to influence how a bill is formed than once it reaches the full floor. Because most work on any bill is done in committee. So how do you set appointments? This can be intimidating for some people, but it's really quite a simple process. The best time to meet with legislators, if you haven't already met with them in the bill formation process, is during committee weeks. So what you want to do when setting an appointment is to be very clear about who you are, who you represent, the reason for the meeting, who will be joining you at the meeting, and when you would like to meet. And in that when you would like to meet category, be as flexible as possible, because the legislator's schedule can be very busy and can be very volatile. It may change as things go along. So contact the legislator's office by email 1 to 2 weeks in advance of the time you would like to meet. Now, if you're on a specific day, it's pretty clear, 1 to 2 weeks in advance of that day. But if you're in perhaps requesting a virtual meeting or a meeting in the home office, you can be a little more flexible. And so 1 to 2 weeks before the first day in that stretch of time when you would like to meet. And when you do that, make sure that they have your contact information, specifically your phone number and email contact. If you have not received a response by 5 days before the time you would like to have the meeting or the first day of the time frame you'd like to have a meeting, call the representative's or senator's office and speak with one of their aides about setting the appointment. Again, showing that you're serious about meeting. It was not just a casual request. Being persistent is important in this business because the legislators are very busy And if you have an important issue, they will want to talk to you. It's just they may have trouble scheduling it. So be persistent but flexible. Remember, their schedule is very restricted. So the more flexible you are, the more likely you will get an appointment. Be prepared for appointment changes. So if you're meeting in person, make sure that the office has your contact information, specifically your cell phone number. I've been doing this for many years, and it's almost every time, I think I can say every time I've gone to Tallahassee, I've gotten a call while I was there changing an appointment time. And again, being flexible is important, because you might say, well, is the legislator available now? I've got a break. And the answer may be yes, that has happened. And if you can't meet with the legislator, meeting with the legislator's aide is very valuable, because the legislator's aides are typically very involved with the bill review process, especially if that legislator is on a committee that's reviewing the bill. So they're typically familiar with the bills and will be able to give good feedback to the legislator based on what you tell them. What is the meeting etiquette and procedures? You've got to be professional about this. You're in a professional environment, be professional. Tallahassee meetings should be in business attire. Ties are typical. I know some of us don't like to wear ties. I'm one of them. But be professional, business attire when you're meeting in person in Tallahassee. If you're meeting in the district or in a virtual way, business casual is appropriate. Be courteous. Silence phones. Keep talking, conversation to a minimum when you're in the legislator's office. This is their place of business. Be respectful of the environment. Be organized and concise in your presentation. You want to be clear with what you are asking for, or what your point is, or what your issue is, and make sure you present it well. Have a one-sheet or a summary of what you came to speak about. Not 10 pages, not a pamphlet, not a book, one sheet. And make sure you include the contact information for yourself and the people who are there with you. Bring business cards. They will request business cards. They want to know who is there. Select a primary spokesperson, and that person will essentially initiate the conversation, not to say that anybody else can't contribute, but you should have one person who is primarily responsible for keeping things on track. Know what bills the legislator has proposed. That will let you know what's important to that legislator. And who knows, maybe that's a bill that you are also interested in, and may be able to help that legislator get that bill through by helping support that bill. Know what committees the legislator is on, especially if a bill of interest to you is being reviewed by one of those committees. And focus the discussion on that bill, because that legislator, if they're on a committee reviewing a bill, is specifically tasked with being knowledgeable about that bill and having input to the formation of that bill or changes to that bill. So if you need to have his support or her support, it is very valuable to approach legislators who are on committees reviewing bills that are important to you. Focus on what you came to discuss and deviate only from that subject if the legislator takes you there. Again, we don't want to waste the legislator's time, and we want to communicate our message to that legislator as efficiently and quickly as possible. And of course, maintain a cordial relationship. Even if you disagree with the legislator, it's not your job to get in a fight with that person. It is your job to communicate your needs to that legislator. So how do you find your legislators? Well, if you've ever been to Tallahassee, you know that it's somewhat of a maze, and it may not be all that easy to find them even when you have their room number. The place to go to find your legislators, and it changes every 2 years, is flsenate.gov for the senators and myfloridahouse.gov for our representatives. So, summary, don't be intimidated. Most legislators are people too.